Wild food, that's what hunting and gathering is all about. This is a journey into Britain's ancient way of life as we attempt to find the foods eaten by our hunter-gatherer ancestors.
Thousands of years ago, here in Britain, all of our ancestors would have been hunter-gatherers, but we know precious little about what they were eating. We believe that when they moved inland from the coast, they would have followed the waterways, and it certainly would have made sense. Rivers not only would have provided an excellent means of navigation, but they were chocker with wild foods.
After the Ice Age melted away, Britain became a water world. A mosaic of marshes, swamps and lakes, far more extensive than we know today. I'm going to look at what remains of these wetlands with the eyes and appetites of a hunter-gatherer. And I hope to gain new insights into these fragile places as I attempt to taste the past. Joining me on this culinary journey is my friend, Professor Gordon Hillman from University College London, who has spent his life studying and eating ancient wild foods. One of the most famous Stone Age excavations in Britain is of a hunting camp on the edge of a lake surrounded by reed beds like these. So this makes a good place to start. And amongst these reeds, there's a prime candidate for a staple food for our ancestors.
The plant I'm interested in here is this one. Some people call them cattails. You can see why. The proper name was greater reed mace. And this is an incredible plant. It's got a lot of uses. The downy seed head here, that can be used to make fire. You could also use it to stuff clothing to keep you warm. The dry stems here, you can rub those between your hands to make fire. But the most important thing about this plant is the fact that you can get food from it, nearly always through the year as well. This will provide you a carbohydrate at almost any season of the year. The bit you need is underground. It's actually the rhizomes, which are like a mat here of ropes that stretch all the way through this area, connecting these plants from the old flowering heads to the new shooting parts here. To get them out, it's quite hard work. I've got one here. Then what inevitably happens, you find a place where they cross over, and then your fingers have to make that decision. Do you stick with the one you've been following, or try and take the other one as well? That's good. You have to be quite patient. If you pull too soon, the things just snap off. I don't want that. That's fine. That's good. That feels good. And that's the kind of thing you get. You can see this is full of carbohydrates. Really good food. Definitely worth the effort to drag the canoe to the water, because the water at this time of year is cold and it's hard work getting these out. Normally you have to wade or even swim in amongst them to try and get them up. Ah, that's a good one.
Reed mace brings in an easy harvest, but doesn't taste good eaten raw. We're interested in ways of extracting the goodness from the starchy central core.
Now, we tried eating that as it is, and it was like eating live elvers. It was just slippery, and we couldn't get the starch out by chewing it. So we decided to pound it instead. So we add some water to this, not a huge amount. We don't have to splash. That's about right, I think.
Pounding has separated the starch from the fibres, making a thick soup.
a consistency not dissimilar to what you used to use in schools as glue. It was called gloy in those days. It's certainly glutinous, like that used to be. Rather scruffy.
We've heated Gordon's mush to begin the thickening process, but it could just as easily have been left to congeal in the sun without the need for cooking pots.
I've made you a drying rack for your gloop.
Well, the gloop is very gloopy.
You want me to do that?
You need to spread it on.
Okay.
It's pretty glutinous.
Yeah. People looking at this might think it's a pretty miserable colour, which it is. That's good consistency though. So this is going to dry now really easily, and when that's dried it'll go quite hard and brittle, and that could easily be packed into a bag and taken on a journey, and it could be then crumbled up and added to other foods, liquid foods, to give them thickening. At the moment it's just a bland paste, but you know, it's an ingredient. I mean, if we were to go to our kitchen today and put our hand into a tub of flour and taste it, we would be very unimpressed. But what was done with this then at the next stage on, that we can only guess at.
Sure.
In a village situation, this is clearly a good and efficient way of producing a carbohydrate.
Yes.
I used to do this, but I've gone back to a more primitive way of cooking the cattail, which I think gives it a much better flavour. Maybe more the sort of thing that hunters might do if they were out in the marsh here looking for some deer or something. They could cook something very quickly. If you see there, you can see a skin, and then inside the skin is this spongy layer. And basically this comes oven ready. You just stick it straight in the embers and toast it until it's black. Get it good and hot, and it greatly improves the flavour, softens it, and it's delicious.
Of course, the advantage of roasting will be that you actually tend to caramelise your carbohydrates to make it more sweet.
Certainly it improves the flavour.
Yeah.
I often wonder, you know, when people were moving around in Britain following migratory animals, that they could easily have gone to cattail as a travel food.
Yes.
Even these rhizomes can be put in a pack and carried for 2 or 3 days and still used without any problem. And when I've hiked and relied on plant food for energy, this is surprisingly good. I mean, you really do get a rejuvenating energy from cattail.
Yes.
This is done now. What I've done is I've charred it. You can see it looks very unappealing. The bit I want though is in the middle, and what I have to do is break this open, and there, looking like cooked potato, are the fibres covered in starch. What you do now, you throw them out, and you chew that and you suck the starch of it. It tastes a cross between potato and sweet chestnut. It's wonderful.
I think the best of it's gone. I'll have to wait for another piece. You've had the best of it for years.
That's right, Gordon, you've got your grey stuff.
That's going to wait a while.
You can have your dry biscuit.
The dense mat of reed mace means we can literally walk on water, and as other plants take root, the landscape changes. These wetland fringes have a delicate, untamed nature, which is rare these days. But for our ancestors, they would have been essential habitats, providing rich pickings to supplement their carbohydrates.
These are quite nice.
They're quite juicy, aren't they?
Young nettles are very nutritious, if you can get past the stings. But they need heating before eating, and that's normally done by boiling.
That's a good one. That's probably enough, isn't it?
Probably enough, yes.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we're going to have a little play with are the nettles. Our ancestors didn't have a cooking pot. They could have taken a bark vessel, put water in it and dropped hot rocks in it to bring it to the boil, but it's an awful lot of work. And in my mind, even though nettles are good eating, I'm not convinced that they're actually worth all that effort unless you've got some meat to put in there as well. So what I thought we might try is just try to wilt them over the fire
to get rid of the sting.
And yeah, and then just see how it is then.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to know how that works.
Well, I'm confident that we can wilt them in the heat, but then how palatable they are at that point, I don't know. And that's why we've kept them long. Keeping them long like this, we can control them on the fire. Doesn't take much work, does it?
Very quick and easy.
They go brown very quickly. They start to burn. The stings are all gone.
The test is in the mouth, isn't it?
Well, that's really interesting. That is the best taste I've ever had from a stinging nettle. That is amazing.
Yes, that's worked.
For years we've been boiling nettles and never thought of doing that. So maybe that is how our ancestors used stinging nettles for food.
You don't need any cooking utensils at all.
No need for a cooking pot. And no washing up. I like it even more.
And they're stuffed full of vitamins, especially C and E, plus iron and magnesium, which all stay intact as the heat oxidises the formic acid of the stings. All in all, an abundant toastable snack. For hunter-gatherers, survival depends on their knowledge of their environment. So to understand the bigger picture of our ancient diet, Gordon and I need to build up an idea of our ancestral surroundings. To do that, we must travel back over 7,000 years to the Middle Stone Age, or Mesolithic.
Okay, and we'll do it again. Okay. You don't unscrew that one yet? Where is it? We're not quite there yet. Okay, a little bit more.
In boggy woods covering a prehistoric lake, Dr. Steve Boreham from the University of Cambridge has just such a time machine for exploring ancient landscapes.
So what we're going to do is cock it, and that releases a metre-long void in the metal barrel. Okay, so if you'd like to grab hold,
Ready?
Up we come. Feel that clonk?
Yep.
Turn it.
So here we are, we've got this strange pole going into the ground, and on the end of it we've got a tube that is gradually taking samples metre by metre as we go down into this mire here, this boggy ground. And roughly here it's estimated at about a metre every 1,000 years, so we're going back towards the Mesolithic now, very close to the Mesolithic. We're already into the period of farming in Britain, and it's quite exciting. Although we're not going to see a great deal other than mud, we will at least be touching mud from that period that we're interested in. And I think that's quite evocative, really.
We've come to the heart of our investigation. We're about to touch the plants of our past. It's a unique experience.
Well, I'm going to bring it horizontal, Ray, if you can catch it. That's the one. Very
Yeah. Okay. Down in the Mesolithic.
This muddy core has various shades which record climatic influences like the ordered pages of a book, from the pale sandy deposits of the Ice Age to the rich dark humus of the Mesolithic.
Solid down here. So what we know then is up here, this area here is going to be the Mesolithic period.
Absolutely, beginning of the Mesolithic.
So when this silt was deposited, Britons were still hunter-gatherers.
Absolutely.
I find that amazing. That's the closest we're going to get, Gordon.
We're actually touching what was laid down at that time.
It's amazing, isn't it? And it's so well preserved. And what have you found over the years when you've been studying the course on this site?
If you're lucky, particularly on the edge of this site, you can actually come up with a hazelnut from the Mesolithic in a core like this, and that's a fantastic moment when you split the core open and there's the remains of a plant, perhaps a leaf or a seed or a bud scale from a plant that grew 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years ago.
That's amazing.
If I try and split this core, perhaps we get a better look inside it. Certainly very sandy down the end here, which is what leads me to believe that this is late glacial. And then, as we come up here, suddenly the lake sediment becomes very organic.
So we've got a warmer, wetter environment beginning again.
Absolutely. Well, this material is very sandy, and I'm not going to taste it, but this material, this organic material here, is almost entirely made up of the remains of dead plant and animal material, and if I put it in my mouth and taste it,
You're more crazy than I am.
there's certainly no sand in there.
And that-
It's very, very fine grain.
Because there's no sand, that means that the wind can't blow it in.
I think the soils here are now stabilised by vegetation, by forests, And what we have here is a debris deposited at the bottom of a 3, 4 or even 5 metre deep lake.
Oh, I've had a taste of it there, haven't I? No sand at all. It's clay, but it's very smooth.
Very smooth.
Very pasty.
It's incredible. We're eating plant matter from the Mesolithic, stuff most archaeologists sift and brush away.
That'll probably be the weirdest thing we eat in this series.
It's very smooth.
These are plants our hunter-gatherer ancestors knew, and their identities in the form of pollen grains, thousands of years old, yet still intact, can be extracted from the core.
We get a very tiny residue, put it on a slide, look at it down the microscope, and amazingly you can see pollen grains, and you can recognise the different types of pollen grains and match them to plants which grow around here today.
We can start to build a picture from those pollen things of what the larger parts of the vegetation were.
It's a fantastic technique for giving you an idea of what the landscape in the area around this lake would have been like.
Amazing.
Pollen core samples from across Britain tell us that there were several trees which dominated wetland edges as the climate warmed. First pine, and then birch are recorded. Then thousands of years later, hazel, oak, elm and alder. By exploring similar environments today, we can fill in the possible shrubs and flowering plants. But for the detail of what Mesolithic Britons were actually using, we have to turn to extremely rare finds, seeds or roots which have survived thousands of years because of charring. This is when Gordon is in his element.
What happens is that when something small and dense hits a fire, if it trickles through the fire and isn't burnt to ash itself, as all the light components would be, then it has a chance of being smothered by the ashes at the bottom of the fire and preserved by charring.
To most people, this is just a small black seed, but to Gordon, it's an identity riddle, one that can be solved using his extensive seed archive.
You're having to use often quite subtle features to distinguish one from another. And you have no hope of doing this except by comparing them very closely under the microscope with modern equivalents.
Gordon's built this up over 30 years of gathering, and without this amazing collection, our study of ancient wild foods would be impossible.
What we have here under the microscope now are some of these rare remains from a Mesolithic site, a hunter-gatherer site, called Mount Sandal in Northern Ireland. The pattern of cells at the upper end here of this seed is diagnostic of the white water lily. But of course we also get the yellow water lily turning up on these sites, and sites in Denmark and Germany. So this is clearly something that was used as food then. But of course we're having to work with miserable little fragments of the past that can't provide us with the whole picture clearly.
So to flesh out the archaeology, we have to look elsewhere. And we've been lucky enough to spend time with Australian Aboriginals who still eat water lily seeds.
Right?
It's good.
Not bitter.
Their knowledge, along with accounts of other hunter-gatherers, give us an insight into how our ancestors may have eaten our native water lilies. At the end of the day, though, it comes down to trying them at home.
Some here, look.
Oh, there's some there, that's right, yes, all popped.
Let's have a look in this lot up here, shall we just cruise into this lot on the left up here, look. This has got to be one of the prettiest plants that we're interested in. This is the yellow water lily, and it's a staggeringly beautiful flower. But it's not actually the flower we're interested in, it's this, the seed pod. And we think that this may have been an incredibly important food to our ancestors. We know that the wetlands were larger and greater at that period, and we also know that in other parts of the world, water lilies form part of a staple diet. And that's what we've come here to collect. I think there's some bigger ones up ahead of us there, aren't there?
We found that fresh yellow water lily seeds are incredibly bitter, eaten raw or roasted. But we've read of the Klamath tribe in Oregon who would ferment their seeds, so we're going to try that. It's an unusual method, but it's an efficient way to collect the seeds, which sink as the pods rot away over several days.
Well, that looks all right, doesn't it?
It does look good. And let's see what the seeds are like. Well, there's a lot of reliberated seeds here. So although we've got a few fruits that haven't gone, of course we've only had a week, haven't we, since we gathered these.
It looks wonderful, doesn't it? Of course, what people at home won't realise is what it smells like.
Well, that's part of the delight, isn't it? This is a potent brew indeed.
I think this is a Gordon special. So you're going to sort all those out?
Yes, we'll decant off the guck from the top, and
I'll go and get a fire going. And
we'll start grinding them.
Yeah. Good.
Good.
The fermentation mimics the natural ripening process and means the seeds should be far less bitter.
It's dead hemlock stems. You might not think to use this for fire lighting, and certainly wouldn't want to try using it green because it's so poisonous, but when it's dead it's all right. And in Lapland, the Sami, when they go up into the mountains, they carry with them dead angelica stalks, which are very similar to this. And the reason being is that they burn good and hot, and they're very light, so they could easily carry with them what they needed to make their brew fire while they're out looking after the reindeer.
Well, here we have it, Ray. Clean seed, look at that.
Well, that's a good harvest. Well, we're in business, aren't we?
We are indeed. This is ready for grinding.
We're going to need some leaves, aren't we, as well?
Yes, we will. What do you reckon?
Well, I saw some giant water dock.
Yeah,
I think that would be perfect.
That sounds ideal there.
I'll grab a couple of those.
They're non-toxic and they're big, aren't they? They've got very flowery innards. You can see the flower being liberated, but they're a bit tough. Of course, they're not half as tough to grind as they would be if we'd parched them or roasted them first. That would have turned them into little rubber balls that are completely ungrindable. But nevertheless, it's going to take a bit of work to get these cracked.
All the best leaves were, of course, on the other side of the river.
As always.
Just take the midrib off the back of these leaves, and then I will wilt them on the fire, like this. If I wilt these leaves, they will become very soft, like a little bit of chamois. And we can wrap this material that Gordon's grinding up in here and cook it in little parcels on the fire. One of my great pet hates in kind of modern backwoods camping, if you like, is people using aluminium foil. I can't stand the stuff because it gets thrown in the fire, it doesn't rot away, and it stays there forever, and it's just not necessary. There are so many leaves that we could use to do the same jobs, and all alternative methods that are usually better, they're more fun and more tasty and non-polluting. Good nettle here actually, Gordon. I think this one may give us all the string we need.
Oh, excellent.
Now this way of getting the fibres out isn't something I learned from any sort of book. I just sat down one day and played with nettles until it presented itself. Now, Gordon, that's beginning to look like concrete.
Yes, I suspect this shaly slate has contributed a little powder of its own, a little bit of rock powder, and turned the otherwise white flower from the centre of each of these seeds into a subtle shade of grey.
I'm more concerned about the binding effect it might have. Yeah. So we've got string, we've got leaves.
Well, and we've got some sludge.
I'm sure our ancestors would have eaten worse. Through our experiments, we're refining our knowledge, and that's the fun of it, because Britain has many forgotten wild foods, if we could only rediscover how to use them.
So I can fold that in.
Yes, indeed.
And it really does do up into a neat package,
That's really quite superb, I must admit.
like that. And then if I take a bit of the nettle, wrap that round.
Perfect.
These techniques aren't as arbitrary as they look. With a bit of experience, you can judge things very finely. And fire is one of the things I find really interesting. Fire is not just simple, it's not just a fire. You know, I've made the right type of fire for this type of cooking. It's quite small, but I've got good hot embers, and I've chosen firewood that will give us good ash, so that I've got a lot of ash around the thing.
Right.
It reduces the oxygen and the risk of the thing being consumed by the fire. So fire is actually a very sophisticated thing. Oh, Gordon, I'm looking at that thinking we should try that now.
Let's give it a spin.
So it's not gone hard inside, it stayed soft,
Right.
which I'm not surprised at because it's kind of a steaming. Now, last time I cooked something for you, it tasted good, didn't it? You've gone quiet.
Let's try.
Still bitter.
Yes, that's very bitter.
That's disgusting. But despite that astringent bitterness, my mouth's very dry now, it really is, you can really sense the food it has the potential to be. I'm having trouble talking now, my mouth is so dry. And it just shows you how specific the knowledge is with regards to these foods. There's nothing haphazard about it. It's got to be done right.
That's right.
Well, you see, that's the problem of television, isn't it? Because the truth of the matter is the production crew are all going on holiday, aren't they? And we had to do this a week ahead of time. I think we should make the crew all eat some, don't you think?
I think that's fair dues, fair dues.
Here, what happens? Oh, no, you don't. Here you are, Joe.
Actually, that's all right.
Keep chewing.
Oh. No, it comes through later, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's foul. That's really...
Gordon, I dare you to eat it all. I give you £1.
You need more than that for the coffee in the hospital canteen machine.
What does it taste like if you do the 2 weeks?
Like you tasted it to start with.
Okay. So nuttier,
All right.
sweeter.
Nutty, yes, that's right. It has a sweetness because it's high carbohydrate content, being slightly caramelized to form sugars when you heat it.
Gordon, that was one of the most bitter things you've ever got me to eat. That was horrible.
That was remarkable.
It's hard to imagine a time when the British landscape wasn't shaped by man. But in the Mesolithic, we were still one influence amongst many, which included herds of wild horses and ancient auroch. There is evidence which could suggest humans burnt reed beds, and certainly open fenland like this would have been a prime hunting ground, with game tempted out of cover by fresh green shoots.
For our ancestors, this would have been a sight to gladden the heart of any Mesolithic hunter. Because, of course, in those days, horses were very much part of the diet. What's interesting is that the landscape we know today is very different to the past. Many of the animals that used to be here are not anymore, and their activities helped preserve different microenvironments that were of great importance to our ancestors in their foraging activities.
These horses aren't wild, but they're as near as you'll find today, a breed similar to the tarpans of old.
I was watching the horses eating here a few minutes ago, and it's really interesting to see not the things that they've eaten, there's no surprises there. They're eating the young shoots of the reeds, they're eating the young shoots of the greater reed mace. But what they are leaving is this, which is iris, which is poisonous. So you can see already their selective grazing is going to have an impact on this environment of what plants remain here and those that don't. It'll be interesting to see over time how that affects the fenlands here.
To live in wetlands is to live with change. Marshes naturally dry out, becoming moist woodland, but grazed areas remain open and often flood, attracting wildfowl. It's all part of the ebb and flow of water levels our ancestors would have understood and felt no need to control. And where the trees fringed the waterways, there was another animal who was an important architect of our ancient landscape: the beaver. They fell trees, but only used the branches for their dams and lodges. The timber they leave behind would have been easy pickings for people who otherwise had only stone axes to cut down trees. Beaver coppice the woodland edge and create waterways through it, making flooded forests which have an abundance of wild foods, especially in the spring.
It's a lovely bit of woodland, isn't it?
It is. It's really very much as much of Britain would have looked like during the Mesolithic, isn't it?
In Britain, what used to be the work of beavers now has to be done by man. Yet these precious reserves are so small, without management, they would dry up and disappear.
The old goosegrass here really is very wiry, isn't it? But I think one of the things that's nice about this is that it's one of those plants that people can very easily identify by the way it sticks
Absolutely.
to them.
They are edible as they are, aren't they?
Yep.
And supposedly very good for the lymph system, lymphatic system.
I'll add a few more then. You never know. This is the winter leaves from a plant called lady's smock, Cardamine pratensis. It's a beautiful spring flower that's full of vitamin C and has a very strong mustard flavour. Really, the only part of that I really like is the petals of the flower itself. The green parts are so pungent that they are almost too strong. But these winter leaves are much milder and a much better flavour for a salad. And I think that's quite interesting as well, because you can find these leaves at exactly the period in the year when a hunter-gatherer would be in need of the sort of vitamins that come from this plant.
Okay.
What about dog rose then? Because there's a big dog rose here.
Yes, I find the shoots of this are only edible when they're really very young indeed.
Like this?
Oh yes, exactly those. Exactly that. You get young, crisp bit that breaks off, snaps off easily.
I like the flowers in
Yes,
salad
they're
as well.
good too.
Yeah.
Very good.
This is my favourite flower, Gordon.
Ah yes, the
Blackthorn. Stunning, isn't it? Now, I like to put these in a salad. They've got that real almond flavour.
Yes, the bitter almond, the cyanide.
So I don't put too many in.
It's nothing like a dose of cyanide. So give it a piquance.
But it's a very strong flavour, isn't it?
It
really is
very
a strong almond
much
flavour.
stronger than hawthorn.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no doubt about it, wild foods can be dangerous, so don't gather what you don't know. But with experience, every step reveals other potential flavours.
Got some chickweed here, Gordon.
Oh, I wonder which sort we've got.
Wood chickweed, identifiable by 3 veins on the underside of the leaf, is delicate but tasty. Celandine flowers indicate small tubers that will later be ripe for roasting. The aromatic wild garlic is a plant whose leaves, flowers and bulbs are all edible. Hunter-gatherers I've met don't see themselves as separate from nature. They live within it, carrying a mental map of where important resources are and when they are at their best. It's a mindset we in Britain have lost, but one our ancestors must have had.
One of the delicacies available at this time of year for our foragers would have been wild birds' eggs. And to give you an idea of what they might have done with them, I brought with me a couple of goose eggs. Of course, these were bought, not harvested. The great thing about an egg is it comes packaged, ready to cook, in its own cooking pot. And what I need to do is open it up. If I put that in the fire as it is and cook it, it will explode, and we want to try and avoid that at all costs. So what I'm going to do, in the blunt end of the eggshell, I'm going to use a knife. They would have used obviously a piece of flint. I'm just going to tap with the knife and break a hole in the top of the egg, which is just slightly over a centimetre in diameter. If you make it too small, the hole heals over and then the egg can burst again. And that egg is now ready to cook, you can see there. And the way I'm going to do that is just going to nestle it into the embers of the fire. The fire's quite hot, this fire. Move the burning sticks away a little bit and rake some embers up around that. I think cooking goose's eggs like this would have been something very special in the past. We kind of take eggs for granted, but if you're foraging for them, there are only a few birds that could give you eggs throughout the year, things like pigeons. When it comes to goose's eggs like this was very much a seasonal delicacy. And you can imagine our ancestors waiting in anticipation for the arrival of the geese in the winter. That meant a lot of things. It meant a fat, rich bird to be eaten during the winter. And then when spring came along, they'd have been watching very eagerly, maybe the children out looking, gathering the eggs, bring them back and cook them. It's quite likely that people sat around and cooked them in this way as a bit of a feast.
Roughly how long would you allow an egg to cook for in a gentle fire like this one?
To be honest with you, out here, the temperature, the ambient temperature, the wind,
yes, sure.
the type of embers that we're burning, the dryness of the firewood, that all has an effect. So the only way to know is to watch.
Yes, sure.
But as a rough guide, I guess, if you want, something 40 minutes, something like that, 30, 40 minutes is about right. So you want to be cooking it slowly. That egg's about ready to take out now, so I think when I take it out, it's going to continue cooking because it's very hot.
I'm glad you're pointing at yourself, right?
No, I think if it's going to go off, might as well go off in a useful direction. This one's ready.
Looks good. Been cooking now.
Yeah, this one's ready for. I really like this direct sort of cooking. You know, it's just straight into the fire, and you get to taste the ingredients. You know, in the purest state. There's no.
Right, true enough.
And there we are. Look,
excellent.
Nicely cooked.
Looks yummy. Thank you. That's good.
In fact, I'll tell you what I really like. I like these, the flowers, especially when they're at this point when they haven't quite opened. Fantastic.
It's a good combination, isn't it?
Good combination.
Yes. Those plants were growing and alive a matter of minutes ago, and this could be true of the egg too.
Yeah.
So fresh, delicious, very tasty, and very nutritious.
What's amazing, of course, is that we sit around and argue today ad infinitum about whether or not our food should be fresh or how it should be grown. And our ancestors didn't have any of those problems. They went out and they picked what was fresh and healthy and ate it in that form. They didn't mess around. Their diet must have been incredibly good. Get some of that chickweed. It looks lovely. Very nice.
You've got the protein and the fat from the egg as a source of energy, of course. Then from the leaves, we've got the vitamins and minerals, and of course leaf protein. We tend to forget that these young leaves have quite a good dose of protein in their own right.
Of course, the problem with a meal like this, archaeologically, hardly anything's going to remain, is it?
We get a few pieces of eggshell, a few bits of charcoal. You have no hint at all as to whether they've eaten any greens with it. Of course, they're not going to survive. In fact, as usual, archaeology offers a very narrow window on the past.
Archaeologists have found evidence of our ancestors eating adult wildfowl, which suggests they hunted on estuaries and inland lakes. And paddling a canoe is a timeless way to explore these still waters.
I'm paddling very quietly here because what we've got behind me, got all these cormorants and some herons. I don't know whether you can see, but up in the ivy there's a heron's nest with 2 herons sitting on top of it. Places like this have got a real atmosphere. I can't help thinking that that wouldn't have been lost on our ancestors as well. Maybe these are places where there were birds of some sort of religious significance. We'll never know. It would be supposition to say. But certainly, birds like this would also have been on the menu. And there's the opportunity, obviously, to collect eggs, to come looking for young birds, fledglings on the nest. Maybe some of the birds, young youngsters, could have been tied into the nest so that they were fed to a large size. That was done later in history with pigeons. Who knows?
What I like to think is that our ancestors, like many of the native people that I've worked with, would have had a detailed knowledge of how many eggs they could take from the nest so that they didn't overexploit the resources that nature provided them. And that's one lesson we could do with remembering today. So we've travelled through marsh, wet woodland and lakes and seen how it's possible to find a diverse diet. But there's one last food we need to consider, and that's fish, which brings us back to running water. Rivers are the hardest wetland to revisit because they have been so altered and abused by history. But here it's different.
This is the Ardèche River in the south of France. We've come here because there's a sense of wildness here you just don't get on British rivers. More than that, there's a strong archaeological heritage. All through the Stone Ages, the Old, New and Middle, people have lived here in this valley, making their living from this landscape. See you later.
See you later, Ray.
The Ardèche Gorge has the feeling of a forgotten world, with bankside plants which Gordon is keen to explore. The river cuts its way dramatically through a limestone plateau. Over thousands of years, it has deepened this gorge, so that today, the Stone Age cave dwellings of the past are found high up on the cliffs. When I travel through here, I like to think I can hear the voices of our ancestors echoing from the walls, teaching their children not just about where to fish, but also about the power and beauty of water as a life force.
One of the real joys of the river is the health of the fish life here. All the shallows are literally teeming with small fry, and there are much larger fish to be found in the central channels. This is a food resource, of course, that our ancestors didn't waste, and there's lots of evidence for how people caught fish in the past using nets and weirs and traps, all sorts of inventions. But there's one particular device that they found lots of here in the gorge, and that's something I'm keen to have an experiment with while I'm here. All through this gorge there's plenty of evidence for the use of harpoons in the archaeological record. The points are made from red deer antler. It's a splinter split away from the main part of the antler itself. We don't know how they were actually attached because the spears don't survive. I've made my best guess here based on similar harpoons I've seen in Australia. But the interesting thing isn't actually how the spears are made or even how they're thrown. The interesting thing is knowing the light conditions so that you can see the fish, knowing the right weather conditions to go hunting, the right place. Those are the keys that make this technique successful or make it fail. And of course that knowledge no longer survives. So this is going to be a really difficult and interesting experiment.
Of course, spearfishing is illegal, and we had to get special permission to try out this technique. We don't know if hunters used spear throwers in the Mesolithic, but they are known from earlier times, so I'm going to try it. I've made one based on an Aboriginal design that I was taught to use in Arnhem Land. It's deceptively simple, improving both speed and accuracy of my throw.
No.
But it doesn't guarantee success. These thin strips of riverside meadows and glades are fragments of a lost landscape which used to fringe all of our rivers. When farming began, it was these areas which were amongst the first to be cleared, so it's a rare opportunity for Gordon to investigate this ancient habitat and the wild foods it provides.
Now here's a plant worth having. This is a plant called the salad burnet. It's certainly more chewy at this time of year than it is earlier in the season, but it's fairly bland, a slight bitterness to it, so good eating as a salad. We gather a lot of this, I think. Well, here we have some plant that's familiar in Britain, the thyme. There's the same lovely smell, and it's obviously with fairly bland fare sometimes, these flavoursome plants would be very important for hunter-gatherers, and to perk up the appetite and make the eating experience all that much more pleasant. In fact, virtually everything around here is edible in some way or other.
With his detailed knowledge, Gordon can see the landscape as a living larder. Even though wild foods seem plentiful here, we've got special dispensation to forage in this wonderful reserve.
Well, here's something worth having. When you want a sugar rush, and I must admit I'm a bit peckish now, let's see. These are really good. They're so sweet. They're very sugary, these flowers of the false acacia, and it's really good. Excellent.
Oops-a-daisy. That's the problem. That's the problem. Look at that. Broken the harpoon point. Takes a long while to make a harpoon like that. The last thing you want to do if you're a hunter-gatherer is to break it. The problem I've got is that the water is really milky. Normally here you could see for a metre or more into the water, but 2 days ago it rained, and the rain has washed all this sediment down into the main river. I can't see the rocks in here, that's the problem, that's how that got broken. And if I carry on fishing here, I'm going to break this harpoon too, then there's no chance of a fish supper. So I think the best bet is to get in my canoe and try something a little bit different.
My canoe is a silent platform, taking me closer to the fish. It's now about stalking, not just waiting. And it takes total concentration.
Got one.
This is far from fishing as we know it today. To succeed, I have to make a direct hit, and after 6 hours, I'm beginning to get the hang of it. With 2 fish for supper, my journey is almost complete, and I've gained new insights into our hunter-gatherer past.
Well, I had some luck.
Well done, yeah, it's fantastic.
So we've got a couple of fish.
One's a trout, what's the other?
There's a chub, I think. Let's have a look. Look.
Oh.
That's gone. And I've lost one barb off this one as well.
So they're fairly fragile.
They're very fragile. But what I am impressed with is how well the binding has held up. And the resin coating has done a really good job, look.
So no sign of cracking or anything, has it?
No, and I've used a rawhide binding, and that will absorb water, and so it will swell. But all I have to do is put that over the fire and heat it, and that will repair that. I saw much bigger fish, but I'm afraid my aim isn't as good as it should be. And so I managed to miss those.
Well, it's just remarkable with murky water that you should have this success.
Yeah, it was very milky water. But it just shows how, you know, a day's rain can spoil your food supply.
Yes, that's a lesson, isn't it?
Yeah. How have you got on?
Well, the meadows that you pointed out to me was really quite remarkable. I'd say half the plants produced something edible. Really quite amazingly productive. Above all, they had these aromatic plants. Not just the majorums, but also these thymes, really nice, very fragrant smelling thymes. Smell those.
Oh, that's fantastic, isn't it?
Really good.
You dry that and put it with some meat, don't you?
And for salads, we've got the salad burnet, of course, the same as we get in Britain, and a bit chewy at this time of year.
It's very chewy at this time of year.
And then, of course, the thing that people often forget about, the leaves of poppy. A bit hairy, but a very distinctive flavour. I can't relate it to anything else at all. It's a flavour all of its own. I don't know how you describe that.
No, but it's nice.
It is a nice flavour.
Yeah, the hair's on the problem. It's crunchy. It's very good. Cool, and I guess we could steam these fish over time if we wanted to, but they're such nice fish. I thought I'd just cook them straight over the fire.
Right. Nice and fresh.
Yeah, they're lovely and fresh, and I think just a very simple means of cooking them will be ideal. I'm not gutting the fish, do you see?
They look nice.
They look good, don't they? I'll fix this spear up a little bit. When I've been spearfishing with Aboriginals, the other thing that they do is that they will straighten their spear like this each day. In fact, they say that a spear needs to be taught to be straight every day.
Really? So it's an ongoing process?
Ongoing process, and even though this stick's a year old, you can still start to straighten it a bit.
The thing about fishes such as trout is that they're rich in fat. They're an oily fish. The oil they contain is very rich in these omega-3 fatty acids that we have all too few of, all too little of in our present-day diet. And these omega-3 fatty acids are very important for brain formation in infants, so pregnant mums should make sure they have plenty of these sorts of foods, and brain maintenance generally. The thing about the Mesolithic people is that they had a pretty good diet, the omega-3, far better than what we get today.
Here you go, Gordon. Fresh from the river. I like this simple way of cooking things in their natural wrappings.
All the oil retained.
All the oil retained, and there's a lot of oil in this area here around the belly. Oh, that's gorgeous.
It's just so juicy.
Oh, fantastic.
It's really the best fish I've ever tried.
Well, that's high praise indeed. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Wetland habitats were once incredibly important for our ancestors. In those environments, they found an abundance of food and other resources. One of the most frustrating things for us has been trying to picture what those wetlands look like, because over the past few thousand years, the agricultural and industrial processes have so transformed our waterways as to make it almost impossible to imagine how they once were. I think we've lost a respect for one of the most elemental and important forces in our lives, water. Not just fish and things to eat, but also spiritual renewal and the sense of enjoyment that comes from paddling down a river or sitting beside a waterfall and just contemplating nature. Somewhere along the way, I think we're going to have to change the way we live, and opening our hearts to some of the experiences of the past may be part of the key.
Food on offer next Wednesday at 8. And can the right diet keep us sexy? Vic Reeves and his wife attempt to find out in The Truth About Food tomorrow night at 9 here on BBC Two.